Good morning. This is Rebecca Landry. I'm here with Elizabeth Ferland for this episode of City of Keene in Focus. Welcome, Elizabeth.
Good morning.
It's strange to do this without Asa.
I know, yeah.
Asa's not here today, so I'm trying to fill her very big shoes, but we look forward to having her back.
Yeah, she's great. She's really talented in so many ways. We're fortunate to have her working for the city. But Rebecca, so are you. So I'm excited to do this podcast this morning with you.
Me too. I think it's always good to mix things up too. So we had a good council meeting last night, so we'll go over that today. I also want to mention a couple of things. One, we have received messages from the Public Works Department about a winter parking ban that's coming up starting Saturday the 17th. So apparently we have some winter weather coming, and so there will be an overnight parking ban. And there will be a couple of lots open. So we do have the webpage keenenh.gov/snow where people can go and get information on that. Just make sure you don't leave your car on the street overnight Saturday night. I also want to mention very briefly that City Hall will be closed on Monday. Monday is Martin Luther King Jr. Civil Rights Day. So we get a 3-day weekend, which is nice. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the council meeting last night and some other issues that I think you wanted to bring up, Elizabeth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so last night we had a couple of public hearings on CDBG grants. I want to talk a little bit about why does that happen at the city level. CDBG means Community Development Block Grant, and it's through the state under the department CDFA, lots of, acronyms, but they get the money from the federal government, so it's one of those programs where the federal government provides it to a state agency, and then the state agency doles it out. And in this case, CDBG grants are only provided through cities and towns or counties. So we get an allocation that we compete for. We don't get an automatic allocation, but we have the ability to compete for grants. And so a housing grant up to $500,000 a year, a public facilities grant also up to $500,000 a year. An economic development grant, again, $500,000 a year. And then there's this grant, which we haven't actually taken advantage of here, which is a micro enterprise grant up to $750,000, and a smaller grant for feasibility studies up to $25,000. And then there's a pot of money for emergency and unanticipated events, that's also $500,000. So what happens, because only the city or town and county can receive these funds, we work with nonprofits to be able to access it. And last night there was a public hearing with two of those nonprofits looking to access these funds. Keene Housing was looking for support from the City Council to apply for a housing grant, and then Community Kitchen was looking for a public facilities grant. And so Southwest Regional Planning Commission is the grant writer and administrator for the city. So on behalf of the city, they administer these grants. And their services are actually paid for out of the grant. So out of that $500,000, a portion is provided to Southwest Regional Planning Commission for that grant administrator to write and administer the grant. So it's really a very small lift for the city. It's just a pass-through that happens, but it has huge impact for the community. So these grants are for low to moderate income projects, and we have lots of nonprofits in the community that really rely on grants like this to do some great work. I know the Community Kitchen is looking for a generator and a lift to be installed that would help them move their food products up to I think it was the second floor, to store them. And it was really interesting to hear from them last night when they talked about right now to get a delivery of food and then move it up to their storage area. It's an 8-hour project for one person.
Yeah, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
I had the opportunity to go down to the facility and look at some of the issues they had with parking and deliveries and try to figure out a solution. And this was probably a few months ago, and I was just really taken aback by how big this operation is and how important the delivery times and the delivery vehicles and where people can park and how they get the products in and out. And it's really a much bigger operation than I think meets the eye.
Yeah, and the community kitchen is an organization that we rely on in times of emergency. I mean, we rely on it to assist the community all the time. During COVID, we relied on the community kitchen to partner with both our Human Services Office and our homeless shelters in the community to provide meals. And so one of the things we've talked about here is how do we support them with an emergency generator? Because if they lose power and they're unable to provide meals to people in the community and in the region, that's an issue. So, this CDBG grant, which is a competitive grant application process, if they are funded, they get that emergency generator, which is huge. But I'll tell you, if they don't get the CDBG grant, we've been talking about a FEMA grant for them also through the city to provide that generator, because we do believe it's an important part of our emergency response moving forward. And actually, Community Kitchen was called out in our hazard mitigation plan as an important partner in an emergency. So
I really appreciated also how many people came out to support or at least speak up for the Community Kitchen last night. We don't often see a lot of participation in the public meetings here, the council meetings, but there was almost a room full last night between recognizing Steve Levy, who we should talk about, as well as support for these CDBG grant applications. So that was a nice thing to see.
Yeah, and Southwest Regional Planning Commission has been doing a great job putting these grants together. We've been very successful receiving these grants. It was wonderful to see these two projects moving forward, and hopefully they will receive funding. So, you mentioned Steve Levy. So the mayor, he really likes to recognize people in the community or people in the region or organizations, for whatever the reason might be. They've been, called out for something wonderful that they've done, or in this case, it's Stephen Levy. It's the time he has had his toy store here in the city of Keene, and he had a room full here of family and friends to support him. That was really nice to see.
He really did. And I was thinking back, I don't know how much I want to say, but my children are now adults. And I remember in my days of pregnancy going to Toy City to look for baby furniture and walking out with puzzles and Legos and you name it. So it's something that I fear we took for granted, but what a wonderful service they have that Steve and his team has provided to the community. It was really good to see him here last night and for him to be recognized.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny you mentioned that as an example. I just a couple of years ago did that with my daughter, went and got some baby furniture there, and it was a great experience. Yeah, it's been a wonderful business. Certainly understand that he's ready for retirement and definitely deserves that, but it's going to be missed in the community, I know.
Yep. So congratulations to Steve. We have some other items that came through council last night, so let's talk about those. Yeah,
so we had a couple of communications, and one of them from Vicki Morton, and her letter to the council is regarding the city's tax rate and concerns for the increases in the tax rate over the last few years and the request to create a citizens budget advisory committee. So last night, what happened, and I think the mayor did a good job of explaining this, is what's planned right now is a presentation from both our city assessor and our finance director on the tax rate. How is it created? What goes into the tax rate?
One of the things that I would like to do, because this is such a big topic and it's such a sensitive topic, is I was hoping that we could do a podcast episode that's dedicated just to this subject. We did a podcast episode for the upcoming revow, but we really could go into more depth about how the tax rate affects the bill and how that feeds into the formula regarding the property values, which are changing. So we don't have to go into great depth here. I hope everybody watches for a future future episodes where we can talk about that. I know that it's a little bit hard to compare apples to apples between Community A and Community B in New Hampshire. Some communities have already done their revaluations, some
Right.
communities have not, and those the tax rate comes down right now because the property values are going up all over the state and beyond.
Right.
And we haven't done that yet. So
Yeah.
we'll go into that in depth in a future episode for everybody.
Yeah, and I think the importance of this right now is we're starting early. So even though our capital planning process is a little bit behind, we're talking about the budget and the tax rate early. And I think that is important because we want to make sure everyone has an opportunity to participate in the process. And so we'll be going over all the different meetings and when people can participate, which really there's a lot of opportunity. First, we will do capital planning, but then we move right into operating budgets. And really, at the FOP committee, there's detailed page-by-page review of those documents. And so lots of opportunity for public engagement. And I know you and Asa will do a great job at getting the word out and helping to explain it because it is complicated, and finding ways to make it easy to understand. If you do this, this is what happens. You know, even understanding that the city may send you the bill and collect the money, but the rate is really made up of three different parts, city, county, and school, and the council only has control over the city portion.
That's right. We'll be getting information out for social media, the website, press releases, emails. I'm sure that the radio station will be in touch, and we can work on talking to Dan Mitchell. That's always fun.
Yeah.
But I think also we say FOP a lot. FOP is the Finance Organization and Personnel Committee. It's 5 city councilors of the 15 elected councilors. So where we will bring presentations from all the department heads on what they are requesting for budget funds, both for capital projects as well as the operating budget. And then there will be in-depth conversations with the committee members, and there are also public hearings. So the public is typically invited to attend at those FOP meetings and at the public hearings, and there will be numerous meetings as
Yeah.
well as the opportunity to email or write your city councilor. So I really encourage people to attend. How do you know where these meetings are happening, when, and that sort of thing? Go to keenanh.gov/calendar and look for the Finance Organization and Personnel Committee meetings, and also look for the public hearings on the city council nights.
Yeah, and so the second piece of communication that was received last night was from a resident, Thomas Burton. He is looking for the council to vote to increase the disabled veteran property tax credit, and that is because the law recently changed it. The maximum amount that was allowable went from $4,000 to $5,000, and so he's looking for the city council to approve going to that maximum of $5,000. So the city assessor, Dan Langell, will be coming in to talk about how many people receive that credit, what happens when we increase those credits. He will also be talking about the upcoming reval, because as part of the revaluation, all exemptions and credits will be reviewed, and there will be recommendations that come from assessing for adjustments. So that topic will be at the next FOP meeting.
So that is at the Finance Organization and Personnel Committee meeting next week for the disabled veteran property tax credit issue. And that would be on the 22nd of January here in Council Chambers at City Hall at 6 o'clock. Okay, so we had a grant award discussed last night, and I like that we're having this grant award to talk about, because when we look at the total amount of funding collected by the city, it's easy to just look at that total number and think that it's all property tax, but it's not. We are very fortunate to receive quite a few grants on a year-to-year basis.
Yeah, and this grant in particular is one for the police department, and it is something that we annually get. So again, here it is, money coming from the federal government to a state agency and then allocated to towns and municipalities. And this one is for tactical equipment, and they are planning to purchase some headsets. So I think like 5 headsets that they're purchasing. And so it is helpful to be able to access these funds. It's a smaller amount. I think it was just over $12,000, but if we weren't receiving those funds, it would be something we would see as a budget request. There were also just a couple of other items on the council that came from FOP. The first one just moved some money from the West Side Downtown Parking Structure Project to the City Hall parking deck maintenance program. The West Side Parking Structure for Downtown, that was a study that was completed and an analysis of the amount of parking that we have versus the parking demand. And the conclusion of the study was that we didn't need an additional parking structure right now. So there was a little bit of money left in there that we moved over to the City Hall maintenance for that garage. And then
maybe if I can interject,
Sure.
that might be a good opportunity to remind people that we have lots of space for parking in our downtown parking lots at certain times of the day.
Yeah.
You know, in the mornings we seem to have plenty of spaces downtown, but as the day goes on, there's more and more demand and competition for that parking. But for those who are able, the Gilboa Street parking and the commercial lot, as well as a couple of other lots in the downtown, are so easy, and they're very quick, and they're right off Main Street. You can park there for more than 2 hours, so the time limits are longer, and the per hour price for parking is less.
Yeah, exactly. You and Asa both did great little videos showing how long it takes to walk from those parking lots to downtown businesses, and it really is just a short amount of time. We're talking a few minutes. And so the more that we can get that word out and utilize those parking lots, I think the better we'll be. And really for the upcoming downtown project, and I want to talk a little bit about that, but it'll be important when that project does happen that we are utilizing those lots and making the connection to our downtown businesses. So there was a couple of other contracts. I think probably the one big one was the Howard Street RFP last night, and the recommendation to be able to sell that. Now, these parcels, some of them were somehow acquired by the city, either years ago and back in the 60s. They could have been donated or taken by tax deed, but they were separate little lots, and they weren't really very valuable. And then I guess it was about 2 years ago, there was another lot out there that was for sale. And we had been looking at city lots and how to make them more useful and then get them out back onto the tax rolls and create some opportunities for housing projects. And so this was one of the parcels we looked at. And when that lot came up for sale next to the ones that the city owned, we brought that to the council, and they voted for us to purchase it. We then took those lots and went through the city's process to combine them all into one lot so that it would be large enough to actually do a housing project. Together, it was just under an acre, and included in that acre is a small strip of land that goes through, large enough for a driveway, making it perfect for a cottage court development project.
Right, that's exciting.
Yeah, and Rebecca, you actually did a lot of work on this with Med Kopczynski to take it through all the steps and get us to the point of selling it, and last night they voted to do that.
Yeah, and you know what I'm going to say. That was a team effort. That was the purchasing team and Med and Dan, the city assessor, and we had help from the city engineer, Brian, and so we've had help from community development. They took care of the merger, and Paul, the new community development director. So a lot of hands involved in making these things happen behind the scenes. So I was really happy to see that go through, and I'm looking forward to seeing what happens.
Next, we had the manager's update. I had a few items to update us on, but I would love for you to talk about the volunteer page, because you were working on that as well.
Sure, no problem. We have, over the years, had a tremendous amount of volunteerism. So I would say probably close to 20 years ago, though it doesn't feel possible, we tried to formalize that into what was called a Spirit of Place program. People who are in Keene, have been in Keene for a long time, as well as people who are new to Keene, love it here. They love community, they love the community pride, they love sense of team here and in the spirit of cooperation and collaboration, and people are always full of great ideas and really good energy towards making Keene better and better all the time. So we developed recently a new way for people to submit a form saying they're interested in volunteering. And this is a way for us to help organize the volunteerism efforts, because it can be a big lift administratively to figure out who volunteered for what, when. Are there forms and waivers required, and is it for this trail or that trail? And so this adds some level of organization to the volunteer efforts. We often hear, I want to volunteer, what do you need help with? So part of this was asking the department heads, what do you need help with? And they're going to primarily be Parks and Recreation and Public Works efforts. We do have so many volunteers in the clerk's office, which on the volunteer page, which is keenanh.gov/volunteer, there is a link to the clerk's office for their volunteering with elections and that kind of thing. And then the library, I noticed, recently learned that they have a lot of volunteers as well. So there is a link on that page as well to the library volunteering. But the primary page that we just published, it's on the services menu on the keenanh.gov webpage. You can go directly to keenanh.gov/volunteer. It gives you a list of options for things that you might want to volunteer for that we need, even youth coaching, which is a really big need. There's also an opportunity to say, hey, what I want to do is not on the list. Here's what I'd like to
Help
do.
with.
Yeah, exactly.
And I love that it's an online form.
Yeah.
It's easier for someone to just fill out an online form versus printing it out and then bringing it in. And it's easier for us as well, because it comes directly, the way that you have it set up, it's if they sign up for something that's related to Parks and Recreation, it goes directly to the Parks Director. If it's Public Works, it goes to Public Works. And so I think it's great. I really think this will grow over the next few years as we get better at it.
Right.
And then last night I talked about MEDC, so Monadnock Economic Development Corporation, is looking to apply for what's called a Brownsfield Assessment Grant. And basically, Brownsfield is a program to look at potentially contaminated properties. And then if you get an assessment grant and go through what's called a Phase 1 and Phase 2, you'd be eligible for some potential cleanup money. And so an assessment grant is really the first step. And MEDC wants to do that, but in order for them to do that, they need a sponsor. So the City of Keene will be the sponsor for this grant. If they are successful with their grant, we would be participating in their coalition and reviewing potential sites. And I can think of at least 2, probably more, in the City of Keene that could benefit from this program. And then, last night I talked about the CIP schedule, but I got the Monday instead of Tuesday wrong. So one of the city councilors came up to me after and was double checking. So we have the CIP review schedule.
Which is Capital Improvement Program.
Thank you. We have the Capital Improvements Program schedule in draft right now. It's pretty finalized. And it'll be going on the city's calendar, probably knowing Terry Hood, our clerk, she's probably already got it up there. But last night we were talking about the dates when both the Finance Committee will be reviewing it and then when it gets to the City Council for a full public hearing and adoption. So that schedule is out there. And right now we're working on the budget schedule. So we have a draft budget review schedule, which is a bit more extensive, and that will lead into budget adoption in June.
And so the public knows the Capital Improvement Program is the larger projects, an awful lot of public works projects in there. Think roads, bridges, sidewalks, as well as facilities, that kind of thing. And there are other programs and projects in there too. That becomes part of the operating budget. So the CIP, or the Capital Improvement Program, goes through a review process with the council, and then the current funding needed to support the next year or two of that program will be included in the budget.
Yeah, exactly. And so the kickoff, even though I said Monday last night, it's Tuesday, March 3rd at Heberton Hall. So this is a council workshop, and it's posted to begin, or it will be posted for 5:30, but the actual presentations begin at 6 p.m. This is a big overview of the capital plan, and then we will start the page-by-page review of the projects in the capital plan on Tuesday, March 10th, at a special CIP meeting, which begins at 5:30. And so the rest of those dates will be included in the schedule if you're interested in following along. And I really hope we do get some participation in this process, because if you think about the tax rate and you think about the city's budget, you have the capital projects, which are the large infrastructure improvements, and then you have the operating budget. Very little changes in the operating budget from year to year. It's the capital projects and the work that's done to put together a capital plan tries to equalize the impact to the overall tax rate by keeping that investment in infrastructure pretty close to the same. It's not going to be exactly the same, but year to year, and that's the goal. But what you're going to hear at the MSFI meeting next week is that we might need to make some adjustments. And recently, the bid for the downtown infrastructure project came back, and it came back too high. So now we are looking at what we can do, what options do we have. And so you'll hear at the next MSFI meeting some options that are being recommended by the Public Works Department. One is to rebid it as is. Another is to make some scope changes and rebid it with those revisions. And then there's, also looking at whether or not to go forward with the bids that we have, which really doesn't seem realistic because of the increase in cost. The cost differential is quite high. But I did have a meeting this morning with the Public Works Department, and they have been meeting and talking to both the two contractors that bid on the project and the ones that didn't. There were pages of construction firms that had downloaded the bid documents but didn't actually bid, and so we're trying to find out why. And so they did get some insight, and they will be talking about that at the next MSFI meeting.
One of the frustrating things about that is we have to delay sometimes. I don't know if this will result in a delay in the project, but that remains to be seen. But every time we have to delay for one reason or another, the cost of materials and labor tend to go up. And so that's one of the difficulties with a project like this, of this size.
Yeah. It is definitely a challenge, but I do know one of the things that we'll be talking about at MSFI is potentially moving around some capital improvement projects. And so even though in your capital plan, the council will adopt it, it's a planning document, really, when you get to the part where you're actually adopting the operational budget with the first year of the capital plan, that's when you make those spending decisions. And so you'll often see, as we move forward, items in the capital plan be adjusted based on additional updates to cost or a new priority or some grant that's become available that we need to match up with some funding from the city. And so the capital plan is an important planning document in how it works into the operating budget.
It really is all about prioritization, which is why we can't stick to a 7-year plan. We look at what we think is going to happen over the next 7 years, and then we make a 1 or 2 year plan based on priorities, right, that change from year to year. It's probably a good opportunity also to mention that with the downtown project, we hear, especially when we hit challenges like this, people think, well, scrap the big design plan, let's just dig up the pipes and replace them. And this is a very common misunderstanding because the extent of the pipes and the interconnectivity of the pipes, we'll simplify it and just say pipes, underground, is far too complicated and interconnected to be able to dig up a section here and patch, dig up a section there and patch. The pipes and all of the infrastructure go under roads, they go under grass strips, they go under sidewalks, they go under crosswalks, they go under parks, and in some cases trees, and so it's just too extensive of a project to be able to dig and patch like we might see in some other road projects around town.
I mean, even if you think about, on West Street, we've seen several patches. There was one, was it last summer, that a utility company came in, they needed to fix something, they dug it up, and then they did a patch. patch didn't hold. There was ended up being caved in some. Public Works had to talk to the utility company, get them to get back out there and fix that. Can you imagine if we had these sort of cuts across the road and over and across the sidewalks that we would be patching it? Yeah, and I think the best way that we've been able to show this is that one of the diagrams on the Downtown Project website, which shows all of the pipes and how they're connected, and it shows how much would have to be dug up to make those changes or to make those improvements.
And we're not just swapping a pipe for a pipe,
Right.
Some
Yes.
of them are being replaced with larger pipes.
Yes.
And better infrastructure, which you can't just necessarily connect the new to the old. It's not that simple, or it would cost more to do that. So
Right. Yeah, and so the other thing that I mentioned last night at council was the winter warming shelter. We have our homeless shelters in the community, and Human Services works with those organizations to provide services to our unhoused population. But in the winter, there's an additional population of unhoused individuals who typically don't want to come into the shelter. Coming into the shelter is problematic for them, and so they choose not to. But that population actually does come in when it gets really cold, and we have to have a place for them to go. And last year, 100 Nights with their new resource room had a warming shelter. And I think that it worked really, really well. They, that's their mission, is to provide services to the unhoused, and they used their large resource area for a warming shelter. People could come in. They didn't have a bed, but at least they could come in and they could be warm, and there would be food, and it served the purpose. This year, the board of directors at 100 Nights voted not to use their resource room for that purpose, and they had a variety of reasons. Mm-hmm. One of the reasons had to do with providing overnight staff. One had to do with making sure that they could transfer over to the people who were living there to be able to use that room in the morning to get breakfast and all of that. So they had a variety of reasons they did not want to do that again this year. But that left us in a bit of a jam. So we needed to find a solution. Last year, we had been working with SCS, so Southwestern Community Services, and their programs to provide that resource through a partnership with the UCC Church. Now, fortunately, because 100 Nights had been opening up their resource center, we didn't need to actually use that, but we did do the work of creating an MOU, a Memorandum of Understanding, as to who would do what and what would that look like. And we are so fortunate that the UCC Church, again, has agreed to do that. So they have stepped forward and said that they would provide that space. So in all of our meetings with 100 Nights, SCS, and the churches, we've come up with a plan to provide a warming shelter at the UCC Church. We're hoping it'll be open on January 20th, and it will stay open until the end of March. It'll be open 7 days a week, 9 p.m. to 7 a.m., and there will be 2 people that are hired to be there throughout those hours. And the city is participating by providing some funding for the staffing, and 100 Nights is participating by organizing the staffing, hiring the staffing, organizing the volunteers. Good. And then the church is participating by providing the space and also helping us with volunteers.
Which is really good to see. I know we're having a cold snap come through the next few days. Yeah. It's always good to have a place to get out of the cold, and we really appreciate the community coming together to make things like this possible.
Yeah, definitely. One of the things that we've talked about is making sure we have a plan for next year, because this is late. I mean, January 20th, winter came early this year, and there were some very, very cold days and nights in December. We need to make sure that we have a plan in the community for this emergency response for next year earlier. So we've all the organizations have committed to working on that, and so that we can have this ready to go in December for next year. So this week, myself and the mayor also met with HUD. So the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development came to see us. So they came to talk about just a review of opportunities that they have at HUD for municipalities. And so we invited Josh Meehan from Keene Housing to join us. And it was a great meeting. We talked about the funding that they have available, and it was interesting to learn about how much funding from HUD Keene Housing receives. Now, we knew it was a lot because that's why we invited him. We knew that was a big part of their program, but it was nice to really understand the breakdown of funding. And the other thing that happened is we learned about some other potential opportunities that we've never really taken advantage of, so that I'm going to follow up with a few different grants that they have available. There's one for, it's called Distressed Cities, there's one for Thriving Communities, and there's one called Community Compass. And so we'll take a look at those and see if there's an opportunity, whether it's for us or another nonprofit organization, to take advantage of those programs.
Is there anything else you wanted to cover today?
I think that's it for me.
Okay, well, Asa, we miss you, and we look forward to having you come back, but it has been a pleasure to do this episode with you, Elizabeth. Thank you for
so much
taking
fun.
the time.